kibble, as opposed to like a dinner button that, well, they're only eating dinner once, or even a breakfast button. Maybe they have a second breakfast, but that's not something that you can reinforce and say yes to. And in an ideal world, if we can say yes to the buttons on the board 10 to 15 times a day, whether that's in a short 30-second, rapid pairing session, or if it's all throughout the day, depending on your schedule, your energy, your learner's energy, etc. So yeah, thinking about ways that you can say yes, it's going to be easy for you so that you're set up for success. So it can be, as simple as a single kibble. So think small as opposed to, entire meals with the soundboard, with the buttons, these sorts of things. And those starting buttons ideally should be motivating and meaningful to your individual learner, easy and convenient for you to model immediately and say yes to, and concrete or actionable. Because the soundboard itself is an abstract tool that they're learning how to use, the more actionable and easy to understand the initial buttons are, the better. You can build that strong foundation, and then you can get to the advanced concepts, once they're pressing independently, once they get it. But just let them understand how to use the board, the value of the board first, and then we can get more complicated. And again, 2 or 3 buttons tends to be the sweet spot, just to help them realize that different buttons have different outcomes. So if you only have 1 button down right now, that's not a problem. Just feel free to add another 1 or 2 when you're ready, as soon as you have an idea of what another good first button or word to start with could be for them. Or if you're realizing, oh gosh, I got, a 6-pack and I put all 6 down. More buttons isn't necessarily a problem. It just depends on your learner, on who they are as individuals. Some are, as Christine Hunger would say, hungry for words and very interested in having labels for things. They see a new button go down and like, great, let me push this and see what happens. Others might get overwhelmed by that many though. So this is where it's individual. So generally speaking, best practice, 2 or 3, they realize, okay, this button does this button does this one does that. And it's not an overwhelming number for them. And it's not necessarily an overwhelming number for us to have to say yes to either. And as soon as you start to get those independent presses, and especially if you see them pressing and expecting a different outcome, pressing like a food button and then just wanting your attention, for example, that was an early one that Miss Katie used to do. Then I was like, oh, she needs an attention button. So she got a mom button to get my attention instead. So pay attention closely to what they're interested in, what they're expecting of an outcome, especially as you're going through here. Yeah, so as always, what we're talking about, these are general best practices too. You know your learner and your household best. So if at any point I say something and you're like, I don't think that's going to work for us, trust your gut with all of this. I'm not here to tell you you're doing anything wrong. I'm just here to help with the nuance of all of this. And you can always make adjustments. I started with a hungry button for Jasper because I would say to her, oh, are you hungry all the time? So I was like, okay, hungry. That's going to be our button. And then when I realized, oh, want hungry, that doesn't quite work. And when we got to specifics like kibble and wet food and different meal toppers, things like that, because it was really important for her to have that autonomy around her food, similar to Katie wanting to give me her specific requests. When we got to that point, it was really, just really advantageous to have that level of control. I lost my train of thought, y'all. I apologize. So examples of common starting buttons can be a play, like something more general. Again, the easier it is for you to say yes and follow through with, the better. It can be specific though, if specific is what makes more sense for your learners. So for my Border Collie Adora, for example, we started with ball because ball is life. Whereas for my kittens, we started with eat, pets, and play. And with play, I can, throw a toy for them to play independently. I can pick up a wand toy and have them engage that way. It's not one specific toy that way. So it really, you know your learner and your household best with all of this. and with what's going to motivate them. And you can always, okay, I think this was where I was trying to get to before. You can always adjust what you put down. You can always re-record it. Yes, this is where I was going. Change is inevitable. So I don't want anyone to hold off on starting. Like, I've seen where people have waited sometimes a month or longer because you want to get the first buttons and the first word choice down, to be perfect. So perfect that you don't even start. And so again, I changed the recording on one of the first buttons for my blind cat, and she was able to handle that change. We don't want to overwhelm them. We don't want to frustrate them with the amount of changes that we make, but I don't want you to think that you can't make adjustments down the line. The layout, and I feel like it's inevitable that's going to have to change at some point. And when we think about this as a lifelong communication tool, their interests, their abilities, your home, the layout of your home, all of these things will likely change over the course of their lifetime. So that board adjustment is inevitable. We just don't want to be doing it too much, too fast, too soon. We want to model any differences that we make. So the point of all that, pick a word, pick a concept, dive in. If it's not working, you can always change it, and we can help with that. Yes, and so Andrea, excellent question as well. How important is it to have buttons in a central location? A central location seems like it has the potential to be physically removed from an action button outside or their food dish. Yes. So the challenge with a centrally located board is that it can be tougher to model, and that for concepts like outside, you're moving away from the soundboard to reinforce it. You don't get a whole lot of repetition in at it. And that's why I mentioned early on for Katie that I could bring the food over to the board, but instead she makes the request at the board, and then I'm typically moving her to the feeding station, which isn't too far in the kitchen behind me. But yes, there's a hump to get over initially with the learner being independent enough to go to the soundboard often. A lot of them like to watch us while we're pressing as well. So that's where that central location, ideally somewhere that's still easy for you to model, that your learner can make eye contact, and that is easy for you to get to. That's sort of our ideal spot. Because the problem with having things spread out so much, yes, it might be easy to press outside on your way out. Yes, it might be easy to press food when you're in the kitchen. But when you get to advanced concepts like more and all done, or now and later, those can go with outside by the back door, with play by the toy bin, with food in the kitchen. So it's a lot harder for them to combine concepts if they're too spread out. And we don't want them to think that there needs to be a physical representation of the button nearby. We want them listening to the auditory cue of the button, assuming they're not deaf or hard of hearing. We want them listening to what the button actually says and not just paying attention to the location or what's around it. So for that reason, we do recommend starting with that central location. And a way to work around them not wanting to go out of your sight to go press is just bring the central soundboard with you, especially while it's small, and is only 2 or 3 hex tiles big. When it's nice and small, just bring it with you and help them realize that the buttons mean the same thing no matter where they are, as long as you are, as long as they're finding the buttons and orienting the correct way there. So the question, I'm upstairs for work, main floor for the remainder. Do I keep the board in one spot? That's where I would just potentially move the whole board with you. If you are, especially once the board gets larger, if your learner is advancing, or if you know that those are spots that you want to have separate soundboards in anyway, it might be worth just having a duplicate board, one in your office and one downstairs. And you can either have them be completely identical or tailored to what's around them. There might be some things that are only relevant on the upstairs board or only relevant on the downstairs board. So you can always get creative with that. But yeah, in the meantime, while you're deciding, an easy shortcut is just pick up the small soundboard, bring it with you. And the reason that works we can think about them learning how to use the soundboard as similar to us learning how to type on a keyboard. At first, you're going really slow. You're looking at each individual key and pressing them. But with time, practice, and patience, you develop the skill set and the muscle memory to go much faster. You don't need to look at your keyboard anymore. And that's why you can pick up your entire laptop and move it wherever and still type, right? You know that your keys are going to be the same. You can even switch from one laptop to a desktop computer, and your muscle memory adjusts from one keyboard to the other. It might take some adjusting. And if somebody were to rearrange your keyboard entirely, that would be tough, right? That would take a lot of time to learn the difference. But subtle changes, we can absolutely understand, or think about how sometimes the numbers are across the top. Sometimes we've got our numpad, our number keypad off to the right-hand side. That's just a shift in that muscle memory. And that's why moving entire hex tiles, as opposed to the buttons inside the hex tiles, moving an entire hex tile from one section to another is a little bit easier than if you were to rearrange all of the keys or the buttons individually. Does that make sense? I hope. And Calvin had the great real world example that he shared the other day of he switched keyboards from one to another. And even though it's the same, there's still an adjustment. There's still muscle memory. It's processing power when we're making those changes. So model, be patient whenever you're making a board adjustment. And I also like to give my learners the option of being present when I'm changing up the board. It's their tool. I don't want them waking up from a nap or coming in from playing outside and being like, whoa, everything smells different, feels different, looks different, that sort of thing. And while we're on the keyboard metaphor, another thing that I like to think about when we're thinking about the layout of the soundboard. So again, central location so that it's easy for you to get to, easy to model, or just carry it around with you. You can also get creative with, you're going to be snuggled up on the couch for the evening. Pop that pets button out of the hex tile if you have it, scratches, snuggles, whatever it may be, and just bring it with you and just press that individual button while you're snuggled up. I recorded the walk button for the first time while I was on a walk with my dogs. Pressed walk repeatedly while we were on the walk, and then added it to the board once we got home. Walk all done, home now. And I was able to model it with the brand new button in that moment. So whenever I can make it salient like that, relevant, I think that helps speed up the learning process. And if you look at your keys or feel at your keys, if you have a QWERTY keyboard, your F key and your J key have a notch on them. They're what's considered anchor buttons. And they allow you to orient yourself very quickly on your keyboard. My goal with designing the soundboard is to create anchor buttons or an anchor orientation that can help my learners find themselves in the space as they're processing, especially when they're excited and they might be moving faster, and they might be moving faster than they can be thinking. The more I can set them up for success to find the buttons that they want, the better. And so, especially since I have had low vision learners, fully blind in my cat's case, and then having one-eyed and partially blind in Katie's case, I've added textures to some of my soundboards and hex tiles. I'm not saying this is a requirement by any means. I'm just sharing this as an idea for you all to get creative. Nobody had invented Kitty Braille for soundboards at the time, right? I just made this up as I went along, and it works really well, but not for the textural reason that I assumed, all of this is still in research. I think it can help to have furniture protectors, things like that. I use felt, cork, velvet, soft side of Velcro for the pets button, for example. So I think that these textures have all helped. But above all else, I think they've actually worked as scent soakers and a way for our learners to differentiate smells a bit. And there's been enough learners who have gone into a brand new house with a brand new soundboard and found the exact button that they wanted without any textures or anything on it, or brand new to them soundboard, I should say. And that makes me think that a lot of our learners may be using scent or pheromone marking in some capacity since other learners seem to be able to find that, even when there's a different font or no sticker on the button. So texture can also be used as scent soakers. So for me, I try to utilize this in unique ways, like putting the mom button in my pocket for the day before adding it to the board. The litter button went in clean litter before it went on the soundboard. So thinking about just ways to use kind of what's natural to our learners, whether it's texture, sight, color to an extent. They don't see color the way we do, but especially smell. That's how they navigate the world. So I'm trying to utilize the layout of the soundboard to highlight ways that they can be successful. And so to that point, the shape of the islands of hex tiles are different. So I've got, small pieces that are in different layouts. The layout of the buttons in each individual hex tile, they're in a different shape, so that no matter what angle my learners approach the soundboard from, they can very quickly orient in any lighting, even in complete dark for the dogs, via smell, via feel, to find themselves at the board. I don't know if that's that was a very deep dive into the theory there. Apologies if that was deeper than anybody would have liked, but enough questions came up, and I am very passionate about all of this, so sorry, y'all. And Susan asked a phenomenal question as well. Aside from removing them, how do you deal with your pet thinking the buttons are a chew toy? Yes, and I just heard the driveway alarm go off, so I'm grabbing some food to quiet everybody down. Ash, come here. Yeah, you heard sound. Thank you. Go find it. Thank you, Adora. Thank you. Yes, here's sound outside. Outside sound. Yeah, so the chewing at the buttons, chewing or scratching at the phone, this is a common issue that a lot of folks see. You're not alone in this. There's something about that phone that is very enticing. And when they're excited, a lot of them want to direct that excitement, scratching, biting the buttons, the soundboard, that sort of thing. So adding a chew button or a scratch button that you can then press and give them an appropriate outlet. Why a delivery has to always inevitably be only during the 1 hour I teach. So sorry, y'all. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, so adding a chew button that you can direct them to something appropriate. Yeah, cheese chew, bully stick, an antler, whatever is safe there. My one-eyed boy Bernie used to scratch at the soundboard a lot, so I had to put a scratching post right nearby. And with a scratch button, he can request a different surface to dig his nails into. I can put catnip on his scratcher, something like that as well. Yeah, and Valentina asked, so I heard the word okay. Would that be the same as yes? Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Whatever your affirmative word may be, this is where pay attention to the language that you're using. If you speak multiple languages, for those of you who are, I want to say, I don't know, I was trying to think of a way to be like intelligent enough to do so, because I personally do not speak that many languages. But I know there are plenty of us that only speak one language that are still plenty intelligent. I'm overthinking this, but yeah, for those of you who are fluent in multiple languages, you can always pick and choose whatever you say most. You can avoid homonyms or words that sound too similar that way. Yeah, so again, there's not necessarily hard and fast rules about things like this. Yeah, I love it, Valentina. I speak Spanish to my cat sometimes. Yeah, so if that's what they respond better to, or if that's certain concepts or phrases that you prefer to refer to exclusively in Spanish, no problem. That can be on your soundboard. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else outside of your household. All right, and I apologize again. I have no idea why Adora is taking quite this long to settle. Hey, Dora, you're okay? Sound all done. The truck left. I really don't know why she's so upset. Okay. So let me know if you have any additional questions about starting buttons. We're about to dive into advanced concepts, and Vinny, your question goes really well with that. We'll chat about adjusting in a little bit too, no worries. Yeah, and so when would it be time to adjust? Like, should I wait several weeks before I change something when they won't start using the buttons? Yes, I would model for 2 or 3 weeks at minimum before thinking about changing it, unless as we're going through this list, as you're thinking about your existing starting buttons, unless they don't meet this criteria. If you're realizing that they're just not motivating enough, I would go ahead and start making adjustments now. If it's too much of a challenge for you to reinforce 10 to 15 times a day and get those reps in, it doesn't have to be all 3 or all, 2 or 3 buttons that you can get that many reps in, but at least one of them, I want you to be able to say yes to like a dozen times a day, and be able to get that many reps in if possible. Or if you're finding that you started with, buttons that are just not as concrete, started with advanced concepts like hi and goodbye, for example, that just aren't very motivating for a lot of our learners to want to press, then I would make those adjustments sooner. But yeah, otherwise I try to give it at least a couple weeks of modeling. And it's pretty typical for them to not start pressing independently for those few weeks. So I'll use modeling exclusively just to get them interested, to get them intrigued about the buttons. And then as soon as I see them attempting to activate, or even if it's just napping on near the board, staring at the buttons, that's when I realize, okay, if they're not able to figure it out, let me start working with them to be successful with the target training. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. All right, so to summarize, if you've got 3 buttons and 3 hex tiles, that's all you need. You can always change what the recording is. You can always change where they're located within the hex tile. Just go and have fun with it. Right. And once they begin pressing independently, then you are probably ready to start teaching some abstract concepts. And as soon as they are independent enough, a lot of them might begin pressing to the point where you are not able to say yes. They're pressing too much. It's too much of a challenge to say yes to all their presses. That's a really great problem to have. But we do need to set some boundaries, put the brakes on somehow. And so teaching abstract concepts in opposing pairs or things that we can contrast to one another can help speed up the learning process and their understanding. So Vinny suggested that they've heard as well about selecting buttons in pairs, like settle and play together, which I do, I have play and work opposite one another on a hex tile for that reason. Now, soon, and later are another common pairing here. Hi and goodbye. Yep, I have those on a hex tile together. Outside and inside are on a hex tile next to each other. So yes and no. More and all done. These are other common ones. And the reason why we want to think about these in pairs is, again, so that you can be modeling in contrast, but typically there's one that's a little bit easier to model. When you think about more and yes and now, we can be kind of taking more action with those. Like, yes, more outside now as we take them out. Yes, more eat now. Yes, Katie want more eat now, which indeed she does. So thinking about what you can take action with and demonstrating that And these are all concepts that you can be verbally narrating and working on their understanding long before you're ready to put them on the soundboard. Because we do run the risk, if we add these too soon, all done, no, later, other things that are just tough to follow through with, we run the risk of demotivating them or frustrating them because they press all done and we're like, okay, yeah, all done. And then nothing's happening, right? Or they press no and we're like, wait, no, what? Maybe they're giving us feedback about our behavior, and they absolutely will tell us to be all done when we're working and stuff like that. But it's just a lot harder to take action with. So build a strong foundation with easy to understand. There it is. She's telling me to be all done now because I stopped feeding her. Hi, Katie. Katie, want mom work all done? All right. How about Katie more eat? Here you go, baby. Yeah, so we don't want to frustrate them. We don't want to shut them down. So also thinking about the more ways we can say yes to them, the more easy to say yes to buttons we can put on the board, the better. So if I'm adding something like more and all done, I'm also adding puzzle, for example. Say I'm adding more and all done because they're driving me crazy with all their food presses or something like that. I'll add a puzzle button so that I can more easily and readily say yes to something food related. It takes them 20 minutes to work through the puzzle and then they take a nap. Great. That's easier for me to say yes to. It's lower focus and energy on my part. So that's something easy to say yes to that I'm adding at the same time as like the all done that might be frustrating for a learner. Does that make sense? I hope. And other abstract concepts and other ways we can think about pairs for our learners' emotions. A positive emotion button like happy in contrast to mad or sad or frustrated. Other time concepts like now, soon, later, or before, yesterday, today, tomorrow. These are all things that we can be working on. And it doesn't have to be just pairs, obviously. Like now, soon, and later were ones that I added together. I haven't gotten to days yet, but I probably would add yesterday, today, and tomorrow at the same time, for example. Because once they get it, once they understand how to use the buttons, the concept of the buttons themselves, it builds beautifully. And they learn so quickly once they get it, once they see the value in this. But getting them to that point, getting them to realize, okay, this is worth their while, that fun things happen, that things they want happen with these buttons, that can take longer. And for some of our older learners that have already established modes of communication, really well established body language, like they always whine by their leash to let you know that they want to go for a walk. It might take them longer to realize the value in the buttons because they have ways to ask for these things already. But once they get it, once they realize the specificity, the precision that they have with these buttons, they're usually all in. And our young learners, they might pick up pressing buttons. They might get the concept of buttons really quickly, but in contrast, they don't have the vocabulary that our older learners do. They're still learning how to exist in the world, what all these things mean. So there's pros and cons, and this is why to any of the ages, right? And this is why they're all individuals and they're all going to pick this up at different rates. The speed at which they pick up buttons has no bearing on their long-term success. And it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong or that your learner is less intelligent. So just have at it, have fun, go with it. And another contrast that Calvin added that I wanted to highlight is big and little. I've even seen like crunchy versus soft in regards to treats and food, these sorts of things. Pumpkin kibble. Yeah, you can have more soon. Hi. You have more soon. Mom, work more now. All right. Yeah. And we have the additional question, what if they press a button while you're sleeping at night? So it's up to you. If you are truly asleep and you're not aware, then they will learn. All right, when human is sleeping, that is probably not the best time to be pressing buttons. But if you are aware of the press, it's kind of up to you how you want to respond. I like to at least give a verbal acknowledgement if it's the middle of the night, and it might just be like a eat later or something, depending on what it is that they're requesting. But I've had enough, at least in the dog end of the spectrum, I've had enough emergency potty requests in the middle of the night that I do like to at least encourage using the buttons whenever they need them. Um, yeah, but they will learn that if we're not awake, if we're not home, then we're not able to respond to the buttons in that moment. And some will still press just to let you know that they at least lodged that request, whether we realized it or not. All right, so target training. If you've been modeling diligently for your learners, if you've chosen motivating buttons, often that can be enough for some learners to start pressing, but not always. Some need a little bit of help realizing that they can activate the buttons, how to shift their weight enough to activate the buttons as well. And so that's where target training comes in. So we've got a few links that Calvin helpfully added to the chat. Thank you so much. The first one is with Alexis and Bunny. And a great shortcut from this one is just if your learner already knows how to do a high five or a nose touch, shake, paw, anything like that, you can absolutely just take the button out of the hex tile, put it in the palm of your hand. You can give you a high five, nose touch, shake, whatever it is, follow through. Show them the meaning of the button by making it happen. So in this case, it's play. I would pick up like a wand toy or something like that and start engaging with my learner in that way. So Susan asks, what are your thoughts about us taking their paw to press, especially a high value button? In my experience, it doesn't typically work out long term. There's not muscle memory involved when we're pushing their paw or their neck if they are nose pressers. Because yes, absolutely, nose presses are great. They're absolutely legal. Shoulder presses are great. Some are butt pressers. Some will sit on the buttons to activate them. As long as they aren't frustrated and you can understand them, it doesn't have to be one style versus another. Yeah, so nose presses are great. Great question. Yeah, but what we find is that if we are taking their body, pushing their nose into it, pushing their paw into it, there's not muscle memory involved. And some of our learners might find that aversive enough that they're like, well, I'm just not going to get close to the buttons if you're by them because they don't want us, manhandling them basically. Some might be more into it, but what I find is far more effective is they're trying to activate the button. You see them even just staring it down, knowing that if this goes off, I'm going to get what I want, but how? When in doubt, just help them out. Go over, press the button for them. If you can time it while they're tapping the button, that's when you press the button, not their paw, not their nose, or any other part of their body. If you can push the button while they're attempting to activate it, that's going to capture the behavior beautifully and really drive home with tactile feedback that they've got to push the button down all the way, and that's what gets them what they want. So they can feel it move under their paw or nose. They can feel it vibrate with the speaker in it or light up if it's got the connect button with the light in it and all, just to give them that really, really relevant feedback. And that was how I taught my blind cat because she didn't see me, right? She went to knock her empty food bowl off of the counter to let me know that she wanted more food. And I had, at the time, the hungry button already recorded, ready to go. And she went to hit her bowl. She hit the hungry button instead. I was ready to activate it with my finger. And she was like, what? All I need to do is push that instead of clearing the entire counter every time I want food. It took 2 times of capturing the behavior like that before she was looking for the buttons, actively feeling around for them. So capture the behavior if you can in that way. And just in general, remember, when in doubt, help them out. I don't want them getting frustrated and giving up and thinking that this is a silly extra human step that they're doing. All right, let me share a couple resources and then we'll have more time for any additional questions that you all have. All right, so The FluentPet community is one of the best resources that we have. It's been around for going on 5 years now. There are lots of in-depth info under the welcome area, start button teaching step by step if you are the type that wants to have that all kind of laid out for you. FAQs, there's more than 40 of them. So if you have a question in the middle of the night or anything like that, this can be a great stop for you. You're always welcome to type it out and ask again. We've got lots of folks who are happy to help, but this might save you the trouble. Under the button Bootcamp section, if you switch upcoming at the top here to past, you can find recordings of all the previous boot camps, including today's, and it'll be up fully once we're done today. But you're also welcome to sign up for another boot camp if it would be helpful to attend again. If you have a household member that you would like to attend, yeah, we'd be happy to have you, truly. And then mentorship calls. These are free for now options with our guides who have had success with their learners. They start with a short presentation about the topic and then deep dive discussion. You're welcome to participate or just listen in, whatever you're comfortable with. If anybody is already in the spanning stage, you're getting more presses than you can follow through with. We've got one starting in just a few hours with Julie, who is our guide who works at the Santa Fe Teaching Zoo that Calvin added the link to earlier. On Friday, I've got one about working with multiple learners simultaneously. I've got ones on independent presses, body language, and translating math. That's one with me as well. Picking first words if you want a deeper dive on all that. So again, you can scroll through, and when you RSVP, this will show in your time zone. We would love to have you. Again, this is a free resource. Take advantage of it while we've got it. And then we've got more resources. We've got a link to Learning Center, those paw targeting tutorials, a soundboard planning tool, and you can scroll through and see lots of great videos, including wonderful ones that Calvin has put together with Jason. In discussion, we've got some coupon codes and things like that there. Chat, share updates there. And then under discussion, the last thing I want to show you on this site, although as you can see, there's tons of great info. Show off your soundboard. If you are looking for inspiration, there are as many different soundboard layouts as there are households, sometimes more than one soundboard per household, depending on locations and learners, if how people decide to divide things up. So there are different wall-mounted options. You can see the wall mount is great for nose pressers in particular. There's that soundboard planning tool in action. There's a lot of these kind of cockpit style that you can see. There's also the island style, which is what we have, and how I'm able to have 4 learners share a soundboard is I've got lots of small islands so they can kind of not get in each other's way. And I know we talked about centrally locating if possible, just to save you the step of having to move everything together or to have to do duplicate buttons, because if you already have things spread out, no big deal. You can leave that outside button by the back door and just do a duplicate central board. But what I love about Sasha's choice here is it's nice and space saving with the design tucked in the corner, but she also left enough room for her learners to get behind and watch her while pressing, since so many of them like to make eye contact. So this can be a fun place to dig around and learn more. And we also have the Let's Get Them Pressing course. We should have the updated upcoming dates updated here very soon. There is a 25% off coupon code if you're interested that we'll go ahead and put in the chat for you. This is a 4-week course with live coaching. It's taught by Diane of Neurodog Training and Alexis with Bunny. Super duper fun, lots of great info, and like a 96% success rate by the end of it. And if anybody is looking for more buttons or hex tiles, we also have a 15% off coupon code that's good for the next 24 hours. And put that in the chat for you. And if you have any feedback for us, we're always looking to improve. Add that as well. And Calvin, thank you for adding so many links in the chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, I see a couple more questions have come through. And apologies, I'm going to scroll back up and make sure I didn't miss any others, but I see real quick that, is it okay to put the soundboard on a table for a cat, or is the floor better? Thank you for asking. I usually cover this. I actually prefer an elevated space for some cats initially. Depends on the cat, but at least for me, with low vision learners and with a multi-species household, I found that teaching the soundboard on an elevated surface was really helpful for my cat so that they could process on their own time, not have to worry about getting underfoot. We quickly ran out of elevated space, and that's why we've been moving it down to the floor, and we've got kind of the cat textile island that's being merged in with all of the rest. But yeah, whatever works, you can always keep them separate. My blind cat Jasper had a countertop board that was hers always. And then she wound up teaching herself the floorboard that the dogs used as well. But she always had her separate elevated counterboard that she loved to use. And a few years ago, I made a button for my older cat by the patio door to open it and let him out. But no matter what I tried, he preferred to meow and look at me through the walls. Yes, and so that is definitely something that we've seen a lot. And my little senior guy, Ash, you can kind of see his booty napping there. He was happy to respond whenever anybody else pressed the button, but he didn't take the initiative to press independently himself until more than a year after I had the soundboard down. And for him, it was stepping on the puzzle button accidentally. And when I ran to the freezer and got a stuffed frozen Kong out of it for him, he had a little like, what moment where he realized, oh, that's what puzzle can do for me. It can get me my favorite treat. And that wasn't something that he already had a way to ask for via body language, like a training session or treats in general or other things that he wants. He's pretty great at staring at what he wants and then back at me and then back at what he wants, or leading me to things he wants, or yeah, having a very particular behavior pattern to communicate things. So for our learners like this, our older learners who just don't see the value in the soundboard, in the buttons, thinking about, as Calvin so brilliantly put it recently, bridging the gap, thinking about what concepts, what's motivating to my learners that's not something that they can easily ask for via body language. And in an ideal world, saying yes to it should be easy, right? But something like puzzle for Ash, I can only say yes to a Kong once a day. He's a senior. He's already not supposed to gain any more weight. But it's motivating enough for him. And he had a year's worth of the buttons being modeled for him at that point. So he didn't need the reps. He needed the value. He needed the desire to press. And so that's why the puzzle button wound up unlocking the board and all of its wonder for him. Hi, Bernie. Did you wake up from your nap? Hi, bud. So maybe thinking about, yeah, something unique, distinctly valuable for your cat other than outside that they don't already have a way to ask for via body language. And I don't see any others that came through. Let me know though if there's anything that I can clarify, any additional questions that you have. I know we are over the hour. I really, really appreciate you all. I apologize for going so long. As I mentioned, I can talk about buttons all day. But you all had a lot of really great questions, and my guys were happy to demo today. So I thank you so much for all of your focus, for being here, for being willing to try something new with your learners. Again, it's not rocket science, but it's different. It's a different challenge. So I want you to just take away having fun with it. Remember that you know your learner and your household best. So trust your judgment when it comes to this, and come to a mentorship call or another boot camp if you've got a question. We can always help out. All right, y'all. I don't see any typing, so I think unless anybody has a last minute question, I'm going to go ahead and let you all go. I'll hang out a minute just in case anybody thinks of anything. But thank you so much again for being here. Calvin, thank you so much for all of your help as always in the chat as well. Best of luck on your button teaching journey. But y'all don't need luck. You've got this. Have fun. And I'll be on the lookout for any updates that you guys have. Can't wait to follow along. All right, y'all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.